Hello everybody, my name is Kara, and today I am here with the Artistic Movement book tag. This tag was created by Miriam from Between Lines and Life, and she was also the one who tagged me. I will of course link her original video down below. I'm super excited about all these questions, so let's get started. Number 1 is Baroque. Name an extravagant book character or a character who lives an extravagant life. And I'm going with Christopher Chant, or the Crestomanci from the Crestomanci series by Diana Wynne Jones. This is the second book, The Lives of Christopher Chant. I've only read like the first couple in this series, but especially in the first book, he is just such an extravagant and over-the-top and fun character. I remember he's described a certain way as like coming in this really ridiculously elaborate dressing gown, which is a passion of his, and he like exits the room as if he were a very long procession of one person. And I just really love that description, and I think it fits him to a T. Number 2 is Impressionism, a book that left a lasting impression on you. Tell us why. I'm going with The View from Saturday by E.L. Konigsberg. This is a really hard book to explain because it sounds kind of boring or weird. It's about a group of kids and they're participating in a quiz bowl, and it's about how all of their lives sort of connect and interact in unexpected ways, and it's like their unlikely friendship and how they're able to answer these questions in the quiz bowl because of these really important experiences or funny experiences or just weird ones that they have had. And like I said, it sounds weird, but this is one of my favorite books. And I think this made a huge impression on me because, for one thing, it was the first book I think I'd encountered that had a really weird or unique format like that, where it's like all these characters' lives meeting up and you're like, oh my god, that's why it all makes sense. I think this is one of the first books I read that had that kind of element. But another really important thing about this book is this is one of the first ones where my love for it was sort of indescribable in a way, because I can point out things I enjoy about it. Like, I love the characters, I love the interesting like plot and everything, I love the quietness of this story, but I can't explain why all of these things together are magic for me. Like, I can't explain why this is one of my favorite books, because everything in it just combines into something that really speaks to me personally. And that's why this is a hard book to recommend to people, because even I don't understand why it is such an important and influential book to me, but I love it. Number 3 is Expressionism, a book with a very personal and specific, possibly unique outlook on the world. The Kingdom of Strange by Shula Klinger. This is kind of like The View from Saturday, I guess, in that it's a little hard to describe because it's a very quiet story, but if you connect with the main character Thisbe, like I really did, even though there's some things about her where we're really not similar. Like, she's really passionate about writing and she wants to become a writer, and I'm not personally pursuing a career as an author, so you'd think that that would kind of be a big thing that we don't share, but it's not. Like, I just really love her. I love seeing her getting to know and appreciate her grandmother. I love the relationships in this book and like her online friendship that she has, and I think this book also was really important for me because it sort of showed her like drifting away or like separating from some of her best friends she had had growing up. And while it sounds really sad, I think it was actually, especially looking back, I think that was important for me to see, because I feel like a lot of us, if not all of us, had a period in middle or high school where we just realized, oh, some of these friendships are not going to last. And while that's really hard, I think it's still important to see that represented. It's like, oh, I'm not a failure as a person because I don't want to spend time with the same people anymore. And also, just on a personal note, thank God I did have a couple of really good, like, best friends to help me through it, because that was the worst, right? We can all agree that friend breakups are just like one of the shittiest experiences ever. Number 4 is Surrealism, a book that puts a spin on the reality of our living, or a sci-fi book you would recommend. So I'm going to recommend a sci-fi book that I don't think I've ever talked about before, and that is The Diabolic by S.J. Kincaid. This one, I went in not expecting very much, to be honest. Like, I hadn't heard a lot about it. It sounded like the premise could go badly very easily, but I really loved it. In this world, there are these things called diabolics that are sort of like androids, a little bit, and they're kind of grown or kept as like stand-ins or protectors for specific people. And our main character is a diabolic, and her name is Nemesis, and she has been like bred as a protector for this girl Sidonia. And then, for all these complicated reasons, like political things and all of that, Sidonia is supposed to be taken as like a political prisoner, kind of like collateral, by this other group, and they instead send Nemesis in her place. And that's really all I want to say about the plot, but I really enjoyed this book. I loved Nemesis as a main character and the fascinating perspective we get, because she's not a human, but her reactions sometimes they feel so alien, and sometimes they feel incredibly human, and I just really loved that. That's one of the things I enjoy reading about characters like this, and I also loved some of the side characters. Like, Tyrus was such an interesting character, and I really enjoyed this book, and I wasn't expecting that much from it. Now, I have heard pretty bad things about the second book, so I might wait to hear reviews for the third one to decide if I'm going to continue or not, but definitely I think you can read this as a standalone, and I really enjoyed it. Number 5 is Pointillism. By the way, thank you for pointing out how to pronounce that word in your video, Miriam, because I did not know that. A book where different narratives make the bigger picture. My answer for this one is Above Us Only Sky by Michelle Youngstone. I have talked about this book before, but I just want to reiterate how amazing it is that I love this book so much, because this book has a lot of things that I normally would not be on board for, and like one of those is a family saga kind of generational story. I really tend not to like those because I find that inevitably I will really connect to one person in the family, like one point of view character, and I'll feel disconnected from the rest of the book because it's like all I really want to do is follow this one character. But this book is done so beautifully. It's centered around a family of women where the girls tend to be born with wings. It sounds kind of similar to The Strange and Beautiful Stars of Ava Lavender, but I loved this book and I really couldn't stand that one. I feel like this book just handled those themes really well. This book also handles a lot of really dark and heavy topics, like the treatment of Lithuania during World War II. That was something I really didn't know very much about before reading this book, and I think it handles it with such compassion and also just unflinching honesty, because it is important to learn about things like that, and I just really loved all of these characters. I cared so deeply about what happened to all of them, and I just got really, really emotional reading this book, and I highly recommend it. Number 6 is Pop Art, a book that criticizes consumerism in some way, or makes you look critically at current times. And I'm going with The Witch of Blackbird Pond by Elizabeth George Spear. So this book is about our main character Kit Tyler, who is sent to live with her Puritan relatives in New England, and she grew up on Barbados, so she is not at all used to the climate or the culture that she is going to now, and this is about how she sort of adjusts to life there, but also how the people that she knows and the family members especially that she's staying with are also changed by her perspective. So I definitely think that the Puritan perspective in this book is kind of a critique of consumerism and of certain elements of culture that were not considered appropriate or beneficial. But another reason I picked this book for this question is because I really do think it's still an important book now. The themes of religious tolerance that this book brings up are incredibly important, of course throughout all times, but I also think in our current day and age with some of the things that are happening, and I just really think this book is a really compassionate view on differing viewpoints and kind of how people can misuse like a culture or belief for their own ends, but also how people can use them for good. And I don't know if I'm explaining this very well at all, but if you missed out on this kind of iconic historical fiction book when you were younger, I would still recommend it. I actually have been thinking about rereading it because it's been a while. Number 7 is Dadaism? I should have looked that up. I have no idea how to say that. A weird book, or a book that puts a spin on the novel format. And that is The Truth Commission by Susan Juby. I read this really recently. It was a recommendation from Kathleen from Worth a Thousand Words, and I am so grateful she talks about that book because I loved this so much. The characters were fantastic, the writing and the interactions between the characters, just everything about this book and the directions it took that completely blew my mind was just so good. And the reason it fits for this question is this book is written as like a creative nonfiction piece, but it's really meta because obviously the book itself, like us reading the book is fiction, but like the characters are writing it as creative nonfiction, which sounds incredibly confusing, but when you read the book it makes sense. And this is one of those things where like I did not really know what creative nonfiction was, but after reading this book I was like, oh okay, I get it. But if you asked me to explain it to you, I'd be like, I don't know. So I guess you just kind of have to read the book, but I highly recommend it. I flew through this too. It's so engaging. Number 8 is Performance Art, a book that would make a great movie or your favorite play. So I, of course, went for the favorite play option, and that is Cyrano de Bergerac by Edmond Rostand. This is the translation by Brian Hooker, and this is absolutely one of my favorite plays of all time. I got this copy for 48 cents at the Strand bookstore when I was visiting a friend in New York City, and oh man, this play made me cry. And I don't know if I've ever read another play where just reading it made me cry, because I feel like there's this I don't know, there's this headspace I'm in because I am a performer. So sometimes when I read plays, I feel like I can be just slightly distanced from them. Not so much that I don't enjoy the play and I can't connect to it emotionally, but it's so rare for me to cry reading one because it's just like a different experience for me reading that. Like putting myself in like the places of some of the characters and thinking about what acting choices I would make maybe. So it's just different. But this one made me sob. This is just one of the most beautiful stories about love and friendship and sacrifice and what people are willing to do, like the things that people are willing to go through in order to make a loved one's life a little easier. And it's so beautiful. This is one of the only examples of a love triangle I have ever read that not only felt justified, but felt like an intrinsic part of what makes this work important or beautiful. And oh my god, like the writing is stunning. The humor is really great too. Like, even though this is a tragedy, it's not a complete tragedy. Like, there are so many moments of like humor and wit and like love, and it's just please read this play if you haven't yet, because it really just changed my perspective on so many things. Bonus question number 1 is a fiction book that discusses or features art in some way. And predictably, I'm going with Blood, Water, Paint by Joy McCullough, which I, haven't mentioned in a hot second, so it's time to obsess about it again. But I'm gonna keep it very brief because I talk about the book all the time. I will of course link my full review. But another thing that I love about this book that I actually haven't raved about too much before is the way that it really does connect me to Artemisia's love of painting and love of art. Because even though I enjoy art, I don't have a real frame of reference for what it feels like to paint something. And that's something that I really did get from that book, is I connected with her passion for this so deeply, and I think it's really incredible when a book can do that. And the second bonus question is, who is your favorite artist, or what's your favorite painting? And I actually have quite a few. John Williams Waterhouse is one that I really love. I actually just did an arts-focused recommendations video that I will link down below. Shameless self-promo, but it's kind of perfect to mention in this book tag. And I really, really love a lot of his works. And definitely one of my favorite paintings of his is one that I talk about in that, and it is the one of Cleopatra. I just feel like that image is such a, like, I have such a strong reaction to it. She's one of my favorite historical figures, and like the expression in that painting is like just her sense of like power and confidence and just everything about it. Like, she's so larger than life, and I think that painting really captured that, and I love it so much. Okay everybody, so that was the art movement book tag created by Miriam. I love this tag so much. I will definitely tag a few people in the description, and if you are at all interested in doing this tag, please do it. I think it's so fascinating. I love these questions, and I highly recommend going and watching Miriam's original video, because she also does a really cool kind of like mini explanation on these artistic movements that I really enjoyed. So thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you soon with another video, and I hope you love the next book you read. Bye!